Welcome to the Gospel Chariot Podcast with Greg Smith. Join me for theological ramblings, thoughts, Bible classes, sermons, and an occasional guest. If you're searching for a confident relationship with God, if you're seeking clarity in your eternal purpose, you have found the right podcast. Let's open God's Word and hear His message. And may the Holy Spirit direct my words and enrich your hearing. How many times have you ever been somewhere and you heard somebody say, make sure you fight fair? Well, in this sermon this morning, I'm telling you at the beginning, I don't want you to fight fair. Because you against Satan is not a fair fight. Now, Jesus against Satan is not a fair fight either, because Jesus is going to slay him just with the breath of his mouth. So I don't want you to fight fair. David gets ready and he goes into battle and he gets ready to fight Goliath. Now, Saul thought David was going to go into battle like everybody else went into battle. So Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. I cannot go in these, he said to Saul, because I am not used to them. And he took them off. Now, if David had left that on and he had tried to fight Goliath in close quarters, what do you think? Somebody said, nope. Was that you, Heather? Nope. Because if you had gotten in a fight with Goliath where you are face-to-face, close quarters, standing toe-to-toe, like if it had been Charlie and Grayson toe-to-toe, that fight would be an interesting fight, wouldn't it? Now, do I think David would still have won? Yes, because of God. But I'm just telling you, it would have been an interesting fight if he had gotten that close. But David knew his strengths, and David knew his weaknesses. He knew his gifts, and he knew his training. And so when they tried to put him in a position where he wasn't using those things, he just simply said, that's not the way I fight. And there's some wisdom in that, and there's some wisdom in us knowing our strengths and our weaknesses and what God has trained us for. So David goes out and Saul replies, you're not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You're only a boy, and he has been a fighting man from his youth. Now, the reason I put those two words in yellow, the boy and the youth, those are exactly the same word. Exactly the same word in the text. So what is Saul saying? Saul's looking at that and saying, well, let me tell you what I see. You're a young man, you're a youth. And he's been fighting since his youth. David, he's been training to be a fighter while you were still trying to learn to walk. I mean, that doesn't look like that's going to be a fair fight. How about size? If you just start putting the math together, how does it look? Size against size, Goliath's got an advantage, right? How about experience? Goliath has got an advantage. He has been a warrior since before David was learning to walk. How about, I had one more. Experience. Like, how about experience? Well, this is all on Goliath's side, right? So Goliath has got size, age, and experience. Yet David is getting ready to go into battle knowing who God was. Goliath sees David. Do you remember what Goliath says to David? It's a Greg Smith paraphrase, but do you remember what he said? Am I a dog? You're going to send a boy out here against me? That's the best you got? That's all you have to offer? And there had been days that they're shouting back and forth to get across this valley. Send out your champion. And they finally send somebody out, and it's a young man. It's David. It's a kid. So the text says, then he took his staff in his hand, that's David, and he chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, he approached the Philistine. Now, I was with somebody this week, and it's really funny because it was about my sermon, and he looked at me and he said, "You know why David got 5 stones? Did David get 5 stones because he was afraid he was going to miss 4 times? No, he didn't get 5 stones because he was going to miss 4 times. Now, it only caused one of them, the brother of Goliath in 2 Chronicles, but there's one there that's called the brother of Goliath. And when they do the brother of Goliath in Samuel and Chronicles both, and it lists 4 guys who all kind of come from the same region, who kind of seem like they're from the same father. And it doesn't specifically say about the other 3. It only specifically says about one, but there's a really good chance they were brothers. What happens when you fight one brother? You fight all the brothers, right? If you fight one part of the family, you fight all of the family. And this is a little bit of conjecture, but just a little bit. He reaches down and he gets those 5 stones, I think, not because he's afraid he's going to miss 4 times. I think he's thinking, I'm going to have to take out the whole crew. I'm going to have to beat up the whole family. And so David's out there with this sling. Man, we start thinking about a sling and we start thinking about a kid's toy. How many of y'all thinking about sling? Think about the little slingshot you used to make as a kid? No. That sling was an incredible weapon. You know, they had people in the army who were dedicated just to using a sling. Do you know that a good sling thrower, I guess that's what you call them, it's the only word I know, do you know they could really throw a rock, and they would get rocks that were a particular shape. They're kind of like a little oval shape, and that's why David, when he reaches down, it says he gets them out of the brook. He gets them out of the brook because the water's been washing over them. He gets the right kind of rock. It's not like any old rock. You got to get the right rock. They've even found some in archaeological digs that are man-made, and as they man-make those, they're kind of they're not round, but they got a certain shape to them, and they would be about the size of a golf ball, maybe a little bit bigger. And you know that a really good slinger could throw that 400 yards. And if you were really good, do you know you could throw that at 400 yards and it would go at 150 miles an hour? And they could even pick what part of the body that they wanted the rock to hit. I mean, you're not talking about somebody who just kind of grabs a rock and throws it, and he's never done that before. When David goes before the Philistine with that slinger, he knows exactly what he's doing. So I want you to think about this, because we started not fight fair, right? How's Goliath designed? How is he designed to fight? What does he have? Got a sword and a spear, right? Now he can kind of throw the spear, but how's he designed? Close up. We need close combat. We're going to get right together, toe to toe. You bring him out here, and when he gets out of here, I'll take my sword and I'll chop his head off. David goes into battle, and as David goes into battle, what does he do? I hit you from so far away, you wouldn't be able to get to me. He didn't even get close to the sword. He only got close to the sword after it already knocked Goliath off with a sword. And it's not David's first fight either, is it? David's been in this position before. And he even talked about, when the lion or the bear came out, I'd seize it by the hair. And this is Greg Smith speculation, so don't make this text, because it's not text. It's just my head. And the difference between text and Greg's head. All right, so are y'all good with that? Y'all good with there's a difference between text and Greg's head? And this is Greg's head? I just wonder when he seized him by the hair if he'd already knocked him out with a rock. It makes sense to me. David's good. I mean, he's not a normal kind of slinger either. And he's been out there. He's been practicing. He's been out there with the sheep, and he's been taking care of them, and he's out there working, and he's out there throwing his rocks. I mean, how many of y'all have gotten bored and just sat around and just kind of done something because you were bored, you didn't have anything else to do? I see David out there with his little sling, poop, poop, poop. And he's practiced, and he's ready, and he's trained. And you know that thing about the lion and the bear and all those other things that were happening? Don't you think that God was preparing David for this moment? So David goes into that battle. I mean, he knows his enemy. Goliath needs to be close up. He trusts in God. He trusts in God because God's delivered him so many other times. And he knows his strength. He knows how to use his weapon. And David also knew it's not his battle, is it? Goliath comes out and he says, I defy the armies of the living God. Do y'all remember that part of the story? And David says, who is he? And when David gets ready to go into battle, does he say, Greg Smith paraphrase again, is this what he says to Saul? Well, listen, man, I've been out taking care of the sheep, and I've been practicing with the sling for a while, and I want you to know I'm pretty good with it. I think I can take him. Was that the word? Did he trust in his ability? No, what's he trusting in? The God who delivered me from the lion and the bear will deliver me from this Philistine. The God who has done this before will do it again. So here we go into our conflict. And the first, Reggie and I both hit the button. So here's the first thing. You know, the most vulnerable person who is in the battle is the person who doesn't know he's in the battle. I mean, do you at least know that you're in a battle? Do you at least get David in Romans chapter 7? And he says, you know, the thing that I want to do, not the thing that I do, the thing that I don't want to do, that's the thing that I want to do. And I want to do good, but every time that I do good, evil is right here with me. And I just can't do the thing that I need to do. I am a wretched, no good, miserable, pitiful man. And who's going to rescue me? And he says, thanks be to God for Jesus Christ, because Jesus is going to rescue me. I mean, do you first just know that you're in a conflict? Because if you're wandering around and you don't know that there's even a conflict going on, then you're in the most vulnerable position you can be in. And we don't fight with world weapons, do we? You know, Paul later writes about our weapons are spiritual. We don't wage war the way that the world wages war. We're not talking about physical fights. We're talking about spiritual warfare. What's happening in our minds and in our hearts, and how the things that are happening in our minds and our hearts create action. And we don't have to fight the way that the world fights to win. I mean, the world fights with might and power, right? We've got missiles and tanks and airplanes and battleships. I don't even know we have battleships anymore, but it sounds, and we have all of those different things, right? And we're just waging war and we're fighting with each other. And what we're fighting is not with that kind of weapon. Our weapons are spiritual. And sometimes, and here's the point, sometimes what we need to learn is we need to learn to flee, because in a lot of those areas, you're not designed for face-to-face combat. That's not the way you need to handle it. Then you say, well, David didn't flee. No, David didn't flee. David just fought at a distance. And we're not David. And sometimes what we need to understand is sometimes the safest way to overcome something is not put ourselves in the middle of it. So the New Testament writer comes along and he says, listen, we need to talk about flee. Like flee, run away, get away from the threat. Have you ever been out like doing something in the yard? I would say mowing, but Brandon mows for me. I don't mow. And I don't like yard work anyway. Y'all know that about me, right? Like I do not like anything with yard work. We were talking to somebody, I think it was Friday morning, wasn't it? We were at coffee, and I said, if it's up to Greg, we'd concrete the whole yard. Amen. Concrete that dude and paint it green, be done with it, right? I don't want anything to do with the yard. Out there yesterday cutting bushes. And I don't like cutting bushes. I was just saying, as I was cutting those bushes down, I was thinking, I don't know why we just don't rip all these out of the ground. Right? There's no reason to have them. When the Q boards mowed my yard, it was my plan to cut down every tree. I didn't want them to have to go around anything, just straight. They can mow a whole lot quicker. Cut down on it. I don't. We lived in a house in Nashville. You had to rake leaves 5 times a year. When we moved here, I had one rule. I don't want trees. Like I don't want to rake leaves anymore. I want to be done with that. What was my point? Fleeing. Yeah. I don't know how that has to do with fleeing, but I promise you, I had an idea in my head. I'm just not sure what it was. Sometimes the best thing to do is get away from something, not be part of it. You're not designed for that toe-to-toe combat. So the New Testament writer comes along and says, look, what you need to do with sexual immorality is you need to flee from that. And when we're talking about sexual immorality, sometimes we want to define that just by one action, but that's not the way that word is used. It's any kind of sexual activity, anything that you're doing sexually that's not within the confines of marriage, and making sure that it's pure. And he says, you need to flee from that. I mean, you just need to run away. Oh, I know where I was going with that. Oh, see, it comes back to me. It's like a circle. So you're out there working in the yard and you step on one of those yellow jacket nests. Like, have you ever done that? Like, I remember one time we were doing some kind of youth thing out here. I don't know if y'all remember this or not, but we set down one of those inflatables on a yellow jacket nest out there in the churchyard. I'm just telling you, that was not a good day, right? Because when we put that inflatable on that yellow jacket nest, the yellow jackets decided it's a good time to start stinging people. And we had another one out there, and I remember put I think it was gasoline all down it. And I was like, that's really cool. I like to do that just for fun. But you're looking at that and you're thinking, what do you do when you step on a yellow jacket's nest? Just kind of stand there, right? No, you flee. I mean, you get away. So you think about sin like being a yellow jacket's nest, and what you want to do is you want to get as far away from it as you possibly can. Because here's what we do in our world. We want to see how close we can get without it really bothering us. Well, I know I'm not supposed to do this. So if this is the line, y'all can't see this, but there's a little line right there. Like, if that's the line, I'll see how close I can get before I cross over it. No, you flee from it. You run from it. Flee from idolatry. Why does Paul keep saying these things? Flee from idolatry. You think, well, I don't have any idols in my house. Well, probably not. We're not very good at having idols in our houses, but we have idols, don't we? We have those things we just can't separate from. And honestly, to be very truthful with you, in our culture, that's usually not a thing. It's a person. It's a somebody. And he says, man, flee that stuff. Man, if you were to, I'm not going to ask you to do this. Go home and do it. All right, don't do it here. But if you were to go home and you start making a list of all the things in your life, now I'm not talking about just bad things. If you started making a list of things in your life that pulled your heart away from God, what would you have on that list? What would be there? Maybe it's a person, maybe it's a thing, but it pulls your heart away from God. And then you start thinking, now it may not be something you can totally do away with, like, don't call me tomorrow morning and say, Greg, I listened to your sermon Sunday morning, so I just wanted you to know I went in today and quit my job. Don't do that unless you have to do that. But what would you do with those things? I love this. And you, O man of God, flee from all this and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. Okay, that's what we're supposed to pursue. You ever thought about flee from all this? You ever wondered what the all this stuff was? Because all you have to do is go back a couple of verses. Quarrels, controversies, envy, strife, malicious talk, evil suspicions, friction, and love of money. Run away from that stuff. Don't get involved in it. Don't get in a toe-to-toe, face-to-face battle with those things. Keep all of those things at a distance. Aliens and strangers in the world, abstain from fleshly desires which war against your soul. Those fleshly things. And you have to define what those are in your life. But you keep those things at a distance. You don't get in a toe-to-toe fight. Because if you submit yourselves to God and you resist the devil, he is the devil there. He will flee. The devil will flee from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. But you stay at a distance. You see David running out into that battle, and he gets to fight Goliath. And he knows, man, if you get within the range of Goliath's sword, that's going to be a tough battle, isn't it? So what if you fight outside that perimeter? What if you never get close enough that his sword can reach you? What if Jason gets up here and he dances all around and makes faces at Charlie, but he's just outside of Charlie's reach? It's a different battle, is it? What battle are you in? I mean, what battle are you in right now? I'm not asking you to speak it out loud unless you want to. What habit are you really struggling with? What sin in your life are you're really struggling with it? What thing that you know you need to do just can't quite do? What relationship do you have that's broken and you need to find some way to fix it and some way to repair it? What in your life is the battle, and how are you fighting the battle? And here's my question. Are you fighting on the enemy's terms? Are you fighting on the enemy's term? What would it be like if you got your sling and you stood outside the reach of the thing that you're struggling with, and you let God help you fight the thing that you're struggling with from a distance? Like if you're struggling with what you watch on the computer, maybe you shouldn't be on the computer. Or maybe you should have some kind of accountability with that. If you're struggling with how many hours you waste scrolling through a screen, right? And by the way, guilty. I don't want to make y'all think I'm just speaking to y'all. I mean, I sat there one night and I was just scrolling through and looking at it. It wasn't like the same thing. It was like I looked at Facebook for a while, then I read the news. I read AP News and CNN News and Fox News. I looked at JSQ, which is a NASCAR site, comes up with all the latest rumors. I looked at the NASCAR site. I thought about, hey, I need to work on so-and-so. So I watched me a couple of YouTube videos about how to fix that. And every time I watched a YouTube video about how to do one thing, it led me to a YouTube video of something else. And then, some of them were songs, and I'm scrolling through all of that stuff. And a couple hours later, I think, what in the world have I done? Because I have accomplished absolutely nothing. Even the video that I watched, Ryan, I already knew how to do it, right? I didn't learn anything in the video. He just did exactly what I knew I was supposed to already do. And you're thinking, what have I done? Have you ever wondered, maybe the battle is all the things that distract you, that you're so busy with, that they're taking? It's not like it's something that's causing you like to sin in a really visible way. All it's doing is really taking time away from that you can't do the things of God that you need to do because you're so busy doing things that really don't matter. But what battle are you in? And as part of the answer to that, just staying outside the circle of influence of the battle that you're in and fighting from a distance and making sure you don't fight fair. And what I mean by fair is toe-to-toe, if the battle toe-to-toe gives an advantage to the enemy. Man, I love just thinking about David running out on that battlefield. Can you imagine Goliath? So David comes bouncing across the battlefield because he ran into battle. Y'all remember that? So I see David, he's running in a battle, smile on his face. Goliath said, when he gets over here, I'm going to chop his head off. And David stops about from here to the church building over the church house over there. And he looks at Goliath, he goes, Goliath never knows what's coming. And David runs up there, grabs his sword, and chops his head off. I wonder when David let that stone go out of the sling, if there was just a moment that Goliath said, uh-oh, didn't see that coming. Ooh, that's going to hurt. Maybe that's how we need to think about fighting. Not getting toe-to-toe with something that has the advantage. Maybe you need to pray about that. Maybe you need some people to get around you. Maybe you need people to pray for you. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't even want to say anything. Maybe you just want to come up here and sit in the chair.
Want to see it? And you're and just talk to God. What's going on in your life? Think any kind of response when asking to do that when we stand to sing.